If you think being a pirate captain was about buried treasure and endless freedom, you have been lied to by Hollywood. In reality, being the boss on a pirate ship was the most stressful, short lived, and dangerous career path in the history of the high seas. Let's look at the math. The average career length of a pirate was roughly 2 years. The career length of a pirate captain usually measured in months or until the next mutiny. The popular image of the captain as an absolute dictator is a myth. On a Royal Navy vessel, the captain's word was law, backed by the British Crown and the Articles of War. If you disobeyed, you were flogged or hanged. On a pirate ship, the power structure was a primitive, brutal democracy. Every pirate ship operated under a set of written rules called the Articles of Agreement. These weren't suggestions, they were a legal contract. Every man on board signed them, and right there in the fine print was the power to impeach the captain. The crew elected their captain by a majority vote. If the captain turned out to be a coward in battle, he was demoted. If he withheld loot, he was fired. If he proved to be a tyrant, he was marooned. Imagine running a business where your employees can vote to dump you on a deserted island with nothing but a pistol and a bottle of water whenever they feel like you're not sharing the profits fairly. Speaking of profits, the pay structure was a nightmare. A captain didn't get a massive salary. In the golden age of piracy, roughly 1650 to 1730, the captain typically received only 2 shares of the loot. A skilled ship's carpenter or a surgeon might get 1.5 shares. The gap between the boss and the crew was tiny. If the voyage failed and you didn't capture a prize, everyone went hungry. If the ship was damaged, the captain was responsible for the ship's performance, but the crew was responsible for the labor. This created a constant, low-level friction. The crew hated the captain for being a boss, and the captain hated the crew for being an unruly mob. Consider the Battle of Ocracoke Inlet in 1718, when Blackbeard, the most famous captain in history, saw that he was outnumbered by Lieutenant Maynard's forces. He knew his crew would judge his choices in real time. He couldn't just order a retreat. He had to balance tactical brilliance with the fear that his own men would turn on him if he looked like he was losing his nerve. Then there was the isolation. A captain was a prisoner of his own ship. He couldn't trust his lieutenants because they were the ones most likely to lead a mutiny to take his job. He couldn't trust the crew because they viewed him as a temporary asset. He lived in the captain's cabin, which was often just a small, partitioned space at the back of the ship, usually right next to the gunroom. He had no privacy, constant noise, and the persistent smell of rot and unwashed men. The psychological toll was immense. Most pirate captains weren't professional sailors. They were often failed merchant mariners or ex-military men. They were living on a powder keg. A single bad day, a single spoiled batch of hardtack, or one missed merchant ship could lead to a vote of no confidence. And the exit strategy? It was essentially non-existent. Most merchant captains eventually retired, bought a house, and drank tea in their golden years. Pirate captains rarely reached old age. If they weren't killed by the crew, they were hunted by the British, French, or Spanish navies. Take the case of Bartholomew Roberts, known as Black Bart. He was arguably the most successful pirate captain, capturing over 400 ships, but his life was defined by extreme regulation. He instituted strict codes, banned gambling, forced lights out at 8 p.m., and insisted that all weapons be kept clean. Why? Because he knew that as a captain, he was only one lazy day away from total chaos. He ran his ship like a prison because he knew the men were constantly measuring him against the gold he provided. He was eventually killed in action, but even then his crew threw his body into the sea to prevent the government from capturing and hanging him as a warning. Even when things went well, the stress was suffocating. You had to navigate complex maritime routes, manage supplies for 100 men in a ship designed for 50, and negotiate with ports that were legally required to hang you on sight. You were a CEO, a military commander, a psychologist, and a wanted criminal, all while living on a wooden box filled with men who were actively looking for a reason to throw you overboard. Compare this to the merchant service. A merchant captain was respected, had a retirement plan, and had the full weight of the law on his side. He didn't have to worry about his own men planning a coup while he slept. He didn't have to worry about the articles being used against him in a kangaroo court. The romanticized image of the pirate captain, the cool, collected rogue with a parrot on his shoulder, ignores the reality of the position. It was a high stakes, low reward gamble where the only way to hold on to power was to constantly provide more wealth than the next guy. So, why did they do it? For some, it was the only way to escape the brutal conditions of the Royal Navy. For others, it was an addiction to the adrenaline of the chase. But make no mistake, the captain's chair was the hottest seat in the world. If you were a pirate captain, you were the boss of a floating, angry, violent company that could fire you by locking you in a rowboat or slicing your throat in your sleep. You had all the responsibility and none of the authority. You were the king of the sea, but the sea was a place where kings were rarely allowed to reign for long. When you strip away the flags and the cannons, you are left with a simple, tragic reality. The pirate captain wasn't a hero. He was a manager of a failing startup, trapped in a job where the only way to avoid the mutiny was to get rich, and the only way to get rich was to get killed. Would you still want the title, knowing that the men behind you were just waiting for you to stumble?